Hey guys, today I had back-to-back sessions. I taught two clients today. They're a husband and wife, Dr. Sam and Crystal. They, they have childcare issues, so usually one of them shows up for a lesson, and we work out for about an hour, hour and a half or so, and then there's a small gap, and then they switch the kids over, and then the other one comes over. So, really interesting. Dr. Sam came over first and his neck was real sore. He also goes to Brazilian Jiu Jitsu. He's my student, but he's actually senior to me a little bit because I had to take a break. So now we're the same rank, but he has more time on me, which is, you know, uh, not what you see a lot with people that teach privately, but I'm cool with that, right? So we were going over various techniques and we were talking about different philosophies and we were doing some spontaneous self-defense drills and then some prearranged two-person forms. And when they come in on Sundays, we more or less play around, especially with a lot of self-defense. We were talking about how you get on the message boards, and MMA and Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu have a cult status, but so many people don't understand that there is more depth to the martial art. There's a history to the martial arts and that there is more than one way to win a fight, and that context, environment, clothing, all of these matter, right? If you look at, for example, say you look at judo, which comes from Japanese jiu-jitsu and sumo. If you look at some of the chokes, some of the maneuvers, you're like, well, why would an art focus so much on grappling and locking? But then when you realize that it was a military technique for many people that learned it and passed it on, and many of the techniques are designed to be used in armor where you don't just punch away. Punching's very ineffective in armor. The groin is accessible for some shots. The eyes, maybe a straight punch to the face. uh, Maybe you can strike the throat, because not everybody can afford the same level of armor protection. That's a truism all over the world. And also the unarmored techniques, people wore kimonos back then. People wore crossover jackets and loose clothing. And that's why there's so many gi chokes and things like that, right? Whereas, you know, uh, you go to Southeast Asia, man, it's blades, 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 and punches, punches, and kicks, right? It's hot. People walk around half naked half the time, right? So people forget that there's more to the martial arts than what's in vogue now. So, one of the techniques that people think is part of a fake martial art, one of the things that people think doesn't work is the leopard fist. I was in the Marine Corps. This was early 90s. I think this might have been after Desert Storm, but I'm not 100% sure. I think it was probably. No, 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 wait. Because I remember who watched me. That was when I was in second platoon. There was Lance Corporal Pena. Okay, that was before Desert Storm. All right, because I never saw him again after Desert Storm. So we had a new guy come to the unit from Security Forces School, and he was Private First Class Guzman. He was from Texas, and he was Mexican. And Guzman, I like Guzman, so I don't want to describe him the wrong way. I don't want to dishonor his memory because in the very short time that I interact with him, I thought he was a cool person. I would have liked to have been his friend. Um, so Guzman had bad teeth. He didn't have the benefit of good dentistry coming up. Might have not had the best nutrition. His teeth were very crooked and little jagged. Some of them were sharp. He didn't have braces as a kid. He might not have had enough vitamin D. I don't know. He was short and broad, like many Mexicans are. Um, dark features, but not overly dark. If that, not like very brown eyes. Of course, he had a high and tight Marine haircut. From what I heard, he scored well in shooting. He, did well in PT in order to get the fast company. They like people with the higher scores. This was in the early 90s, and people made fun of him, right? So one day I was in the gym and they had a little back room with a matted area. They had a speed bag, they had heavy bag, they had some mirrors, and strangely enough, never an organized martial art class there for almost all the time that I was there. But I was working out in that back room, hitting the heavy bag, and I noticed him there, and he was working the speed bag. He looked like maybe he boxed a little bit, and I walked over, introduced myself, shook his hand, and I said, "Oh, what do you do?" He said, "I do taekwondo." I'm like, "Well, me too," because there was a taekwondo club on base, and it taught Sangam Taekwondo, ATA Taekwondo. So I said, "Well, that's pretty cool." I said, can I see you do a form? That's kind of like what we did back then. He says, all right. So he did a form, and I'm like, that's WTF Taekwondo, World Taekwondo Federation, Olympic Taekwondo. And then I showed him one of mine. He goes, oh, that looks different. One thing leads to another. We start sparring, and it was controlled. We pulled our blows, but it was continuous. And I remember he threw a side kick, bumped into my chest. I got some kicks off on him, some punches, very controlled. Shook hands, kind of hugged it out. I said, "Hey, man, really cool meeting you." So a couple days later, I got a friend of mine who's in another platoon, and he's like, "Hey, yeah, you do that karate stuff." I'm like, "Yeah, I do." You know, he says, Private First Class Guzman. I was like, "Yeah." He said, "Well, he fucked up Corporal so and so." I'm like, "What?" He says, "Yeah, they were just making fun of his appearance, making fun of his teeth. And he just was taking it and taking it, and he just turned around and punched him, like punched him in the face. He goes, "No, man, he punched him with the throat. It looked really weird." I said, "What happened?" Well, he backed off. He had trouble breathing, and we intervened, and next thing you know, he's up on charges. And he said, I had to testify. I'm like, "What?" You know, and he said, "Well, yeah, I was standing in front of the major," and I said, well, sir, I mean, I'm pretty sure Guzman could have killed him. I mean, it looked like he didn't really hit him as hard as he could. He just wanted him to back up off him a little bit." And I was able to talk to Guzman, and I think they kicked him out of the unit. I don't know if he did any jail time. I'm assuming he did. So what the fuck happened? He said, "Yeah, man, that motherfucker just wouldn't get up off me. He wouldn't leave me alone, and so I just hit him with a four knuckle leopard fist right in the throat." I said, "Damn, were you trying to kill him?" He says, "Hey, man, we weren't even, I guess I didn't even think. It just happened." I mean, nowadays, people are telling me that those techniques don't work. You can't do it under pressure, yada, 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 right? You got to realize these techniques are all invented for different purposes and different contexts, right? For example, would it work in a boxing match? Well, no, you have the gloves on. Would it work in MMA? I don't even know if you could make a leopard fist in MMA, right? But one punch, not full power, I mean, ended that encounter before it began, right? Was it right for him to do so? No. I mean, you're in the military, you're in a institution, but one less than full powered leopard fist from someone who was shorter, had a shorter reach, and a shorter temper than the big white dude that was egging him on, um, damn near killed the guy. I'm convinced if Guzman was, more vicious than he was, that corporal would be dead, right? And here's another thing. Um, I don't know how much he practiced that move in sparring. He probably learned it in a couple of one steps and in his forms. I don't even know how many WTF forms back then had a leopard fist. So it might not have even be something he practiced regularly in basics or in forms or in sparring. He might have just practiced it now and then as a one-step sparring technique. But applied to a person, it was devastating. It's as devastating as whacking him with a stick, right? So also that this kind of tells you like the mouth, it's a deadly weapon, but it's also a weakness. If be careful who you're bullying, be careful who you're talking to because they may be shorter, they may not be your idea of what a good-looking man is. I don't know why that would be important in military service. I don't know why. I think it might have been a race thing too because he was Mexican American, and um, white supremacy existed in the Marine Corps back then. Neo-Nazism was prevalent in the military back then, and it's in it now. Mic drop. Serious. Full stop. So why your military leader would just berate you about your teeth, something you have, you know, they weren't unclean, they were brushed, they were white. They just didn't sit in his face, in a pleasing looking manner. But I mean, you're in the Marine Corps, your fellow Marines, they're there to fight with you. They're not there to have sex with you. They're not there to, be attractive to you. So, and back then, it was a and totally anti-gay policy anyway. So maybe if that corporal was gay and just wanted more attractive Marines around him, maybe that was some closeted stuff. I don't know. I just know that mouth of his almost got him killed by a smaller man's smaller hand shaped like this, hit without full power. And that's one of those, supposedly ineffective, completely useless martial art techniques. It's not a useless martial art technique, it's a deadly weapon. Now, if you were to spar with this all the time and condition with this, if you were a full-time, vital point striker if there was a competitive format where people were allowed to hit each other like this, and you went to a fight camp for 3 months and trained these techniques as you know on bags, on pads, and you wore controlled equipment, and you whacked each other with your strikes, and then you entered a ring and fought to the death. you know it would probably be a thousand times deadlier than any kickboxer or MMA guy, right? From what I can tell, Guzman learned in a civilian sort of recreational martial arts school. But I guarantee you, if he was a short Mexican with not good looking teeth growing up in Texas, I guarantee you he had his fair share of fights. He might have been in a gang like a lot of young people do. Uh, it takes a certain level of exposure to violence and exposure to a dangerous environment to be able to instantly lash out to someone's throat for saying the wrong thing. That's a sign of someone who didn't grow up in a nice, wonderful area, who didn't get participation trophies, right? Um, but that anger of his got him in trouble, and you know, I I doubt he had an illustrious Marine Corps career, but I don't know. I wish I was wrong. Folks, be careful who you bully. Be careful who you discount. Be careful what martial art techniques that existed before 1993 when the UFC came out. Be careful of discounting them as fake. All right. Be careful of discounting them as ineffective when you know little to nothing about them. All right. That technique almost ended one man's life and most certainly ended another man's Marine Corps career. All right. Y'all have a good day. Bye.